everybody. Welcome into the Ben Burnett Show. My guest today is Alpharetta Department of Public Safety Head Chairman, Police Chief, you name it, John Robison. John, welcome in.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
I have to be 100% honest. When I started fishing to see if you wanted to do this, I assumed the answer would be there's not a chance.
Well, I was just kind of being courteous when you texted me and asked me last night. And next thing I know, you're like, be here this morning. And so I'm here. But, I trust you. So I'm assuming this is going to go in a good way.
Who's running the when you step away for publicity breaks, like you've been known to do? Who runs the Department of Public Safety?
Well, we've got a whole command staff, man. Think about it. On weekends at 3:00 in the morning, the brass, as they call it, we're not there. So there's always on-duty supervisors for police, fire, and 911 that are there. Now, like right now, Deputy Chief McCall's there, but there's always some kind of supervisor there running the show 24 hours a day.
He's awesome.
He is awesome. Yes, I'm very fortunate to have Wes by my side. We work well together, and he's a good guy.
I've sat as an elected official for almost one whole year. You were the first. So everybody knows when you get elected, typically your professional staff will take you around to meet with all of the department heads, and you don't really get to ask the questions that you wanted to ask. So I tried to go around the first day that I was sworn in and meet with as many of the directors as possible. Do you remember?
Oh,
do you remember sitting
the day
down
after we ate lunch at the Mexican place across from the new Mexican place across from headquarters? Yes, I do remember it well.
Do you remember the question that I asked you when nobody was around?
The question, I do remember you quickly saying that you were supportive of us, and that basically the question that needs to always be asked is, or does police, fire, 911 have what they need? Before we do anything else, we need to make sure our public safety is taken care of. So it was something along those lines, and I remember thinking, okay, cool, this guy, he gets it and he supports us, which is huge for us.
It is, and you guys have, in any city really, your Department of Public Safety, your police force, and your fire is a huge portion of your budget.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think to most responsible governments, they're kind of viewed as the Department of Defense. Mm-hmm. And that you make sure, I don't want to send you guys out into the streets and you not have what you need.
Sure. I appreciate that.
That being said, I have no idea what those things are. I remember seeing some sort of armored vehicle for $1 million.
Well, yes.
Or a truck.
It wasn't quite $1 million, yes, and it's our North Fulton SWAT team, which we share with Roswell and Milton. But it is a Bearcat or armored rescue vehicle is what it is, absolutely. But it wasn't quite $1 million; it was more in the $300,000 range, I think, somewhere in there. Yes.
Well, I just thought, I want to see that.
So come on, man, we'll take you for a ride. Interesting story and there's always that concern of being too militaristic but the day that went before council and we discussed it, the night before, the weekend before, is when the Vegas shooting happened.
Yeah.
And I think we were all it was an unfortunate reminder that, unfortunately, Alpharetta, wherever you are, we're just in that day and age now where we need to be sure we're well equipped, God forbid, if something like that were to happen.
What would you say? So much of that, and I'm not going to, I respect you tremendously, and I will not fray into anything super political, but have you seen over the last 10 years, as those shootings seem to garner more media attention, maybe they happen more often and maybe they don't, do you think that we do a good enough job as a city, as people, as law enforcement, of dealing with mental health? Like, what would you change as somebody who sees all the reports and deals with 100% of it?
I think the positive with the mental health angle is that it is now being recognized as a major concern that has not been addressed properly over the years. And I know for years I've been hearing this in law enforcement. Years ago, I went to CIT training, which is training that is geared for officers to handle mentally ill people that are under the influence, and to try to be able to, unlike the old days, just lock them up and throw them in jail. No, let's try to get them the help they need. So that emphasis has been there for a while, locally. And, one of our goals is we try to get all our officers CIT certified and get them that training they need. But I think now we're seeing nationally with these shootings, with what just happened, in California at a bar,
Yeah, sure.
at a military hero that has served come back with PTSD. Apparently, don't know a lot of details yet, and had some mental issues and some problems. And so, yes, we understand that now, and there's a national awareness of that. The problem is, how do we address it? We do all we can on the local level. I do feel like we are doing everything we can as far as the Alpharetta Police Department and the Fire Department 911, but then again, we're not doctors, we're not psychologists, and there's only so much we can do at a scene where you've got somebody that's having an episode, and we've only got so many options. I would like maybe to see our laws change. Florida has a little more flexibility for law enforcement. They can show up on the scene, assess, and go, hey, this guy needs help, and we can take him now and get him the mental evaluation he needs. Here in Georgia, we have to have a 1013 signed by a physician or by a judge, that type of thing. And so there's that extra step that can be problematic sometimes.
Is that something that can be addressed? Would have to be addressed in the Georgia General Assembly?
That's my understanding. Yes, that would have to be a change of the law. Correct.
Well, and that would be, as a guy who sits as a locally elected official, I don't think I deserve that. I don't deserve to be the guy who makes that call.
Right.
Because I'm not blessed with the resources. Not that I don't have great resources.
Sure.
But there's probably millions of dollars in studies and things
Oh,
that
absolutely.
would go into something like that.
But I am confident that we are doing all we can locally to train, de-escalation training, all those things to try to prepare as much as we can for encounters we know we're going to have with people that are having mental issues, mentally unstable, and of course those that are under the influence of drugs and situations like that. We prepare as much as we can for that.
So my wife, Lindsay Ann, who I talk about in some form or fashion at least once a show, is a BSN. She's a registered nurse. And she says unless you work in law enforcement or the medical community, you have no idea how lousy people are to each other.
Oh, absolutely. That is absolutely true. And, although for the most part, I don't want to paint a bad picture, like here in Alpharetta especially, we serve phenomenal citizens. It's a great place to work, and we are very blessed here, especially in this area. But yeah, at the end of the day, man, people can be really nasty with people sometimes. And that's something that we do see. We see the bad side sometimes that most other people don't see. And that's why we're here to hopefully help maintain some peace and security and dealing with those situations as effectively as possible.
So I'm gonna start back, and I'm gonna get back to present day. When did you know, and how did you know that a career in law enforcement was the path you couldn't turn down?
Actually, it was high school. I was just.
Did you fight a lot? Did you cause trouble?
No. I was pretty boring actually. I was that boring kid. My mom taught at the school where I went to high school, so raised in church, and so it was not anything exciting as far as that goes. Just always had an interest in it. Kind of had an interest in the FBI type thing, and it took me a little while to get there. I started my career a little bit later after a couple other career paths, but what
did you do before you?
Well,
so this is what people want to know.
I went to Georgia State and got my undergrad in criminal justice. Loved it, and that was kind of the path. But at the same time, was also having an interest in theology and
you're an ordained.
Was many years ago, and ended up getting a master's of divinity along the way. And
Reverend Robison?
No, that was a long time ago. But so different path, and so ended up going that path. But about 30, started saying, okay, now I'm ready to get started in my law enforcement career, and applied here and got hired in 2000, late 2000, here in Alpharetta.
So how long did you moved from there? Talk about the jobs you had here,
okay,
in order to take that leadership track.
Sure. So I was on patrol for about 3 years, and then
is that fun?
Yeah, it's a blast.
Love it. That would scare me to
love
death.
It. No, had a blast. Loved it. Again, fell in love with Alpharetta quickly. I really did. I loved it here, and so did that for 3 years. Got interested in investigations, and was able to move up and become a detective. Probably the 3 most meaningful years of my life in law enforcement. Last couple of years of that, I worked crimes against children, got involved with an FBI task force, which I can go in more detail later if need be on that. But it basically dealt with people that were trying to sexually assault children. And as difficult as that was, I took great regard, if you would, joy in locking people up that tried to hurt children.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's to me one of the things that we do best in law enforcement is protect kids, and so I got to do that firsthand. Got involved in that, then got promoted, went on the road as a supervisor, worked my way up to lieutenant, and then in 2011, I was still living in Cobb County this whole time in Powder Springs area. We just moved over that way. I'm from that side of town, the west side of town of Atlanta. And a job opened up at Powder Springs Police Department, and it was second in charge, basically a major position. I thought, what the heck, I'm very happy here, but I'll try it just to see if that's something, God wants me to do. And sure enough, got the position. Long story short, a couple years later, I ended up being chief there for a couple years. And then Gary George, the guy that hired me originally in 2000, I was one of his first hires. I heard he was hanging it up, and I was like, man, that'd be my dream to go back in Alpharetta. And they were crazy enough to bring me back, and it's been it's been a blast ever since, honestly. Since January 2017 when I came back as director.
Do you ever, I think that the thing that people miss when they get, and I don't care if it's a director level job or a police chief job or a CEO or a CFO, do you miss being an individual contributor?
Oh, absolutely. There are days. I mean, again, I love my job, and we have the best staff, just the greatest people, greatest support from people like you on the council.
And I am wonderful.
You absolutely, no doubt, no doubt. If you weren't, I wouldn't be here talking to you. So, but yeah, no, there are days, man, where I miss being out on a beat, and just interacting with people, and I love being a detective, and so yeah, that's kind of what that's what gets you into it. That's the calling part. Like, yeah, that's what I want to do, and I'm serving in a different way, and I'm still serving the citizens, and I'm also hopefully serving the folks that work for Alpharetta Public Safety. But yeah, I miss those days sometimes, just being out working a 12-hour shift in a patrol car and handling those day-to-day calls.
I think that's the one, as I talk to people who really have the opportunity to accomplish great things at a high level, almost all of them that get to that C-level job think, man, if I could go one day out of the week and just be an individual contributor to a sales team, I would do it in a heartbeat. And I think part of being successful, I'm sure there are guys that you were riding beats with when you were starting. Absolutely. That thought there's no way in hell I'm gonna ever take, if you promote me, I'll quit.
Right. No, absolutely. There are some that are just, that's what they're born to do. That's where they want to be and have no desire for anything. And we need people like that. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, we need those people. They're the backbone of the department, honestly. They really are.
The guy that I had worked for 5 or 6 years ago, and I had moved around and when I left working with him, he was like, this isn't it for us. We'll see you again soon.
Right.
And I took some leadership roles, and I thought, I don't mind sitting at a table with a senior leadership team, but man, I really hate other people's problems. And I cannot imagine, I get some, so not to give too much away, but every week you guys send the city council, and I would imagine it's like this most places, the weekly report. The weekly report. Mm-hmm. And when I start reading through it, I'm like, who are these people?
Right.
Like, I saw last month that some abandoned vehicle was stuck in the hole at Topgolf, and I thought,
yeah, that was a drunk driver that
I hope so.
Had literally, pardon the joke, had a hole in one, and literally somehow his car ended up in one of the greens there at Topgolf, and went off a little ravine there, and he was asleep at the wheel, so he was found that morning. And
when you guys stroll up on the scene, the guy's in the car.
Yes, I believe that was the case. I'd have to go back and read the report, but I believe he was still in the car. Yes, yeah.
I know 2 days are the same, but you've never heard that before.
No, that's the cool thing about law enforcement and fire, and all three of them, all nine. You have some parts that are very repetitive, the accidents every day, and the minor medical calls, things like that. But you have those cases like that, those calls like that. We're like, yep, this is a first.
I'll remember this forever.
Exactly. So that's one of the interesting parts about this profession is you'll always come across things. I haven't done that one before. This is new to me, and that's kind of a cool part of it. Sometimes it can be.
What would when you said one of the things that really motivated you as you begun your leadership trek was crimes against children? Mm-hmm. I have to tell you, I looked hard at I was before 30, it potentially going to work in law enforcement. The economy was terrible, and so it was probably a great time to be attracted to it. And that was the one thing. They offered me a job at the city of Atlanta. I would have been pension vested, and I couldn't. That they asked me if I had any problem dealing with that. I was like, I would kill somebody. There's no way. Like, that is a calling,
Right.
and I don't know. And I'm thankful that it's obviously gone the way that my life has gone. But I look at that and think, I don't know how people are cut out to do that. How do you take that home and function as a dad and a husband? Like, that's got to be challenging.
It's a great question, and I've been asked that a lot because, especially when I got on the task force with the FBI, kind of the history there. We had a case that I was working, literally the apartment complex right behind our headquarters. It was a horrific sexual assault case. A dad on his two daughters, and I won't give you the details, but there was a webcam involved, and we went to the FBI hoping they could help us with some forensics. And long story short, they said, "Hey, come be a part of the team," and I did. And one of the first things you realize is there's a level of depravity and evil in the world that most people don't know about.
I'm sure.
There is. It's disturbing. And so, and I had, at that time, I think my daughter was 7 or 8 or 9 at home, had kids at home, sons and daughters and younger. And so, you start seeing some of these cases with, 7, 8-year-old kids. I mean, as young as like 2-year-old kids, and just horrible, people are willing to travel across the country to go and abuse these children.
Or world.
Or world, absolutely. And so it really opened my eyes to the depravity out there. But again, for me, it was, I am protecting kids. I am absolutely protecting children and getting scumbags in prison for, typically on our cases that we worked, it would be 30 years in federal prison. These were federal crimes, which was wonderful. The part you asked about the going home and things like that, and the things you have to deal with, the images, things like that, that is difficult. I have a wonderful, wonderful wife, Lori, who has been supportive of me in law enforcement from day one, and is just awesome. And you don't want to come home and just tell her about these cases, and put this stuff in her head.
I imagine you can't.
No, and I wouldn't for the most part, but she was always very supportive and understanding of that. But honestly, too, it's my faith. I feel like this is where God wants me to be. At that time, I felt like God put me in a position to protect children, and that was part of my calling. And so, but there was a point, though, too. There was a case that I worked. I'd been in about 5 years, and I remember going home at night, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. And I was like, it may be time, maybe time to move on. And it worked out timing-wise anyway. I got promoted. But that was the first time I really struggled with getting things out of my mind, some of the things I'd seen and heard and read and stuff like that. So it was difficult, and I don't think everybody can do it. But it was just one of those things God equipped me for at the time, and was able to get me through it. And we locked up some really evil, bad people and protected kids along the way.
It is one of the things that I think is so interesting as a dad of young kids, and my youngest is adopted. And so to wander through, you can't go through an adoption process and not learn a tremendous amount about the foster care system. Sure. And about, you can't help but learn a lot about sex trafficking.
Right, absolutely.
And I'm shocked at how many of those children come that are assaulted, taken advantage of, they can't, and they don't function like normal kids or normal people do, and that's not their fault. It was a very difficult thing to reconcile.
Sure.
What would you, as a guy who sits on the front line and a man of faith, what do you think that we can do to make that system better? Because I don't have to think. I know that plenty of those kids, when you're investigating, when your task force are going after bad guys, are kids who come out of pretty rough situations, and the foster care system's tied to it.
That's a short question with a really long and in-depth answer that I don't know that I can address totally here. The foster system, DFACS, for instance, back in the day I dealt with them regularly, and complete respect for a lot of the employees there. But, at the time, I remember there was at one point maybe 14 or 15 workers, for every whatever hundreds of kids. It was ridiculous the caseload they were carrying. And it just wasn't humanly possible for them to be able to operate efficiently. But that's a government issue, that's a funding issue, whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, it still always starts at home. And whether it's foster parents or whatever the case may be, kids need people invested in them that are watching and knowing what's going on. A lot of kids that we found that were victims or are potentially drawn in by predators. Kids had mom and dad at home, but they were downstairs while 10-year-old daughter's upstairs on the computer on the internet going God knows where, and the parents had no clue about it. So honestly, yes, there are these situations where kids are coming out of bad homes and are apt to be more drawn to that kind of behavior, unfortunately. But I'm telling you, a lot of these kids that we think are just good straight A students at school and stuff like that, but you get an 11-year-old girl. This is an example I used to use of a story when I would go around and talk to parents, and she was on the internet and met somebody else on the internet, and long story short, she eventually, quote unquote, fell in love with this guy and let this guy come pick him up one morning, January 1st, at his house and take her away, and her parents had no clue, and it was a horrible situation. She was able to get out. The FBI rescued her, and she now actually goes and speaks to schools and students and things like that. So, again, I'm giving you a short answer to a very long, drawn-out version of what it should be, but I think parents need to be more involved and more aware, especially now in this day and age where kids have literally access to the internet all over the world just in the palm of their hand with these phones.
It's scary.
It is scary, and there's got to be some parenting, and it's got to be part of the process. And I'm not saying parents are willfully, knowing that their kids are in this world sometimes, but there's a lot of garbage on the internet. There's a lot of bad, evil people out there that are using the internet to try to draw kids in, and it's a tool they use. Back in the day, a pedophile would have to go to Cub Scouts or baseball practice or the park to try to find victims, and they might get lucky, might not. Now they can get on the internet and go to chat rooms and sites and games and all these things. And again, I'm out of the loop now. We have a detective right now. She's doing a great job with this. She could tell you more about this than I could. But the general principle is they are getting kids through these internet sites, and parents have got to be more up on things like that and be more involved.
So your advice to moms and dads out there of kids that are over the age of 7, lock your internet down.
Lock it down, maybe. I guess, there are tools out there you can get, but, like the rule in our house, even back in the day, and this is one of those kind of things where it's cool dad's a cop and it sucks dad's a cop, kind of thing. But we wouldn't let our kids have laptops and stuff in their rooms. When they were younger, if you wanted to get on the internet, you had to come downstairs and come to the main computer and do whatever for school, whatever there. And they didn't like that, but 12, 13-year-old kids, they're not at a point where they're able to make great decisions yet. And that's my job as their kids. And that's my job as a parent. They got older and became 16, 17 years old. That was a little bit different. And even then, it can still be an issue. And we try to be careful with that. But it's establishing ground rules and being a parent sometimes, which is not always fun. But it's something that I saw a lot of, just parents being checked out and not having a clue what world their kids were in. And that's where it can be really dangerous sometimes.
So I have a relationship with the folks at Faith Bridge, which is
phenomenal organization. My sister works there, actually.
Oh, cool! Yeah. I'll be over there this afternoon late.
Great organization.
And one of the things that I was so shocked to hear about with them was that and due to the opiate crisis, that I think maybe getting under control, or maybe more so. Maybe you could shed light on that in a minute. But they have said that over the last 3 years, the number of children that are in foster care is actually rising at the highest rate they've seen in a generation because of the access to these drugs is so cheap.
Sure.
Do you see that here?
The opiate issue in general?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now, you compare us to West Virginia, Ohio, some of these states where they're just getting it's just horrific statistics. But yeah, we had... we had several overdoses last year in 2017. We've had the number has been down this year, thankfully.
Well,
and our officers and our fire personnel do a phenomenal job with the Narcan. I can't even give you the number right now how many people we've revived with Narcan. Wonderful tool, and save people's lives with that. But yeah, it's an issue, and it's cheap and it's easy, and you may get it through the typical drug dealer type avenue, but you also can get it from your local doctor as well. Unfortunately,
sure.
and through legitimate prescriptions or supposedly legitimate prescriptions. So it's a major issue, and the interesting part about this is it affects every demographic out there. It doesn't matter wealth, what part of town you're from, anything like that at all. Kids in a good home, kids not in a good home, adults, whatever the case may be. We did a study last year to kind of look at it in Alpharetta. It was spread out all over the city the age range was from young to old, with several different demographics in between, and so there's not really one group you can focus on. It's a major concern for our area, but especially for our country too.
What would you, if there was something that you could see over the next 18 months for the Alpharetta Department of Public Safety, if there was a strategy that you had that you wanted to implement, what does that look like? What would it be? As just a guy who, honestly, I'm a casual observer in that.
That's a great question. It's funny, we just had a conversation this morning. One of the things I addressed when I first got here is we need to do a better job of utilizing technology and intelligence and helping us combat crime. There's a lot of intelligent-based policing theories out there and programs and software, but one of the things we're really trying to do here, and we've got a couple avenues we're working on right now, is to really use data and police intelligence that we gain from data in the area to help us use that data and analysis to help us try to thwart off crime. A lot of times police departments, we get almost like firefighters. Okay, here's a fire over here. We're having burglaries over here. Let's go handle this and let's make them go away there. And as you're doing that, then you're having entering autos over here, or you're having other burglaries over here, other property crimes, whatever the case may be. And so the goal is to get to where we have such a great intelligent-led policing strategy and program in place with the right people in place with that. And we have the people there already. We just need the tools to make it happen, that we are able to get ahead of the game, ahead of the curve a little more than we are now. Police, we're always catching up, it feels like, a little bit. And there are strategies and ways, and it does cost, and that involves technology.
Are you asking me for money?
Not officially yet, but I'm putting that seed in your mind right now that it does cost, and technology is a beautiful thing, but it can be an expensive thing as well. But so that's one of the things I think, looking the next year or two, now that I've been here almost 2 years, that's definitely on the radar. Something we want to, whether it's using LPRs, license plate readers, things like that. That's just one example of
I'm
many
a passionate
tools.
fan of license plate readers.
That's one of the tools, man, that are out there that are a great tool for law enforcement, but that's just a small example of a lot of stuff that's out there that we can utilize. And one of the keys, too, is working with our partners. The people that are committing entering autos, breaking into cars in Alpharetta are the same people oftentimes that are in Forsyth or Gwinnett County or Cobb County. And so one of the keys is also having that metro area connection with other agencies, which we do.
Their boundaries nobody can see.
Exactly. That's exactly right. So I'm excited about the future. We just had a conversation this morning about a plan we're putting together, and I'm really excited about how we're going to utilize technology here in the technology city of the South, Alpharetta.
So I have, to go along with that, I was sitting I build data centers all over the Southeast.
Right.
And one of the things, I was meeting with the Department of Defense contractor in the last week, and I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, based on what you can actually share with me, what are you doing? And he said, we look a lot at what's called artificial intelligence. Mm-hmm. And to the same tune that if you know that this band of people are breaking into cars in Gwinnett County and then in Johns Creek and North Point Mall and coming, that they're taking the data based on those people and their patterns and creating specific outcomes. Now, these guys at Raytheon are trying to avoid wars,
right? Of course,
and so
bigger scale.
So it's a little bit different. But they're like, no, we know where the problems are. We know where they are. We know where they were yesterday. We know where they are today. We know where they will be tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And he goes, they do the same thing over and over again, and they have scalable patterns and outcomes. And I was like, huh.
And that's the key.
They're trying to stop the war
right
before it starts. They're like, no, it's going to happen.
That's a great analogy, Ben. And we're trying to stop the crime patterns before they start, actually, based on other patterns. That's a 30,000-foot view of looking at it, but that's actually a great analogy, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, you can credit me with that.
Okay. I'll give you, absolutely. When we vote on the multi-million-dollar project I'm going to bring forth, I'll be sure to give you the credit for saying that it was okay to do that, and we'll make that happen.
We'll go to Tom and Bob and just make sure that everybody's fine with a giant tax increase.
Finance loves us anyway, man, because it's like, what does public safety need now? I bet what new truck or what new vehicle or what new
I bet you guys
stuff.
are the biggest sunk cost to somebody who has no idea.
Course. But I promise you, I'm not in it just for the toys. Everything that we do, number one, to keep our citizens safe, and number two, one of my priorities, of course, is keeping my personnel safe.
and always should be. What would you say? How can the average resident of this community support you? Support your department? And don't. I know you have. I know you're going to tell me you've got plenty of support from all over the place, and that your firefighters and your police never pay for a meal at lunch because everybody's so great. But what if there was something that you guys wanted for that the average resident who doesn't have a vote on a city council, how can they be supportive to you?
That's a great question, and we are, and I will go ahead and say it, even though you said not to. We are already very, very well supported. We tremendously are, and very blessed here, like nothing I've ever seen. We really, honestly are. I will put a plug in for something. We have what's called the Public Safety Foundation, and we have a board for that. A lot of local business leaders, and even a couple of folks from council have been on before. And what that does is they raise money. Now, I don't get involved in raising money for anything about our department. Our folks stay away from that. But they raise money to help when we have officers that get in medical situations where it becomes financially a concern. To give a great example, we have an officer whose father is dying, and he's having to quickly fly up to some state up north, I don't remember which one, and he's going to donate his kidney. He's going to work out where he can give his kidney to his dad.
Wow.
And save his dad's life, But with that come immediate financial cost, and this is an officer with a young family, small children.
And that is not, that's intensive.
It's intensive because now with insurance, and again, we're very blessed here with our insurance. We have great insurance, but high deductibles, travel costs, all those things in situations like that. So our foundation stepped up and donated some money to him that they had to help him, cover those costs. We've had several, I can give you story after story of our law enforcement, our fire, our 911, even some of our admin staff that have been in difficult situations. We had another situation where a staff member lost their spouse this past year, just tragically and suddenly, and the board was able to reach out and help them during that time. So if there are ever any citizens or businesses out there that are interested in that, they can contact us and I'll get them to the right people. But the foundation, even if it's not donating money, it's just being a part of some of the events. We have 5Ks, golf tournaments. We just did the red and blue, the big Benihana thing we do every year, which is a huge hit. And all that money, all of it goes toward helping support our law enforcement, our fire, and our 911 personnel. And that's a big help. So I don't normally plug that, but you asked, so I'll mention that. Just because, again,
no, this is not the place for humble.
Right. Part of my job is to help do everything I can to take care of our folks, and we got some wonderful people in this community. Rotary's a big supporter of us and have helped with the foundation a lot. Several other businesses, organizations, and we're very grateful for that. So sometimes I don't think a lot of people know about it, honestly, and people don't know, hey, I would like to help, but I don't know how, and that's a great way they can help.
Well, you're lucky because you're on the fastest growing podcast.
Is that right?
In Georgia.
How many will this reach? 7, 8?
Dozens.
Dozens, okay.
Dozens.
Hey, each one can reach one. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, we'll start with that. I'll take whatever we can get.
I was told last week that I was the fastest person the fastest show they've ever had to get 100 subscribers, and I said, well, that was a foregone conclusion.
Wow. Well, now, I didn't even know you had the show until you sent me the link to your interview with Caddy, which I enjoy because I love Caddy. Thank the world of Cadillac, and I was like, wow, Ben's actually got a podcast. That's pretty cool. So.
It is. It makes my wife very nervous.
Oh, I'm sure. It makes me nervous, to be honest with you. I'm still nervous just sitting here with you, but so far it's gone pretty well, I think. So.
Well, and the only reason I sent it to you was because he started talking about you guys, and his whole.
He's a huge supporter. He's a phenomenal supporter of ours. He really is.
He will literally do anything.
He will, and he backs it up, and has. He's been phenomenal. We appreciate. He's just one example of one of those community partnerships we have with somebody. He happens to be recognized, obviously, in the Atlanta area, especially. But he's a phenomenal supporter. But again, we're blessed with people like that just. They really do. They step up and support us, and I can't ever express enough my gratefulness for that.
Well, and you pretty much wrap up the A-list people I was going to bring on. So now we're going to go down to the B-list celebrities.
Is that right?
Here.
Yeah, I'm sure. And I'm sure once word gets out that we've talked, that's going to really probably multiply your podcast audience even numerous times.
It will. I've been accused by Donald Mitchell. Who said it doesn't matter who's in the room on a Monday night, you will try to get them to vote for you. And he does it, and I don't care what the issue is, you will try to get them to do it. I was like,
wow.
Born for it, baby.
I will just leave it at that. So,
John, thanks so much for coming in and spending some time with us today. The new episodes of the Ben Burnett Show drop every Monday. You can find them anywhere podcasts are made available. Thanks, everybody.